Let's start the study circle with 3 ohms. Om. Om. Dear Swami, we are so grateful to be able to meet here together in your presence today. While we are here together studying your word in your Bhagavata Vahini, we ask that you open our ears and hearts to whatever it is you want us to learn. Please speak through each one of us and help us progress in our spiritual journey. Jai Sai Ram. Sai Ram, everyone. I just want to remind everyone to mute your cell phones and let's be respectful. Of course, I have a little announcement. I just want everyone to make sure they're holding the mic at a right angle to their face because the recording last week was not clear. I just want to make sure it's not because of the mic, the way we are holding it. And I don't know if there are any other issues with the internet or what have you. I am not sure about that, but definitely it has not happened before. Once before when it happened, it was because of the garbled voices were because of the way we were holding our mics. So if I can just remind everyone to hold the mic at a right angle to your mouth and just facing towards it, I think that would help us, especially if the front circle is right in front of your mouth. So I think that's the best way to get clarity online. And it's only because we are having a online session and this is being transmitted online via YouTube. We just want to make sure that we can actually, everyone can hear us, even if they cannot participate. All right. So just a little bit about last week. Last week was we did chapters 20 and 21. We listened to those chapters. We then talked about various topics leading from surrender to devotion to gratitude, and then talked about Duryodhana's intent with sage Durvasa and how Krishna is always ever gracious in helping the Pandavas, and how Draupadi surrendered to Krishna eventually when she knew there was nothing else that anyone could do to help her from her situation. And there was a lot of other topics we covered through the intent of our action. I mean, we talked about the intent of our actions for a long time, basically how it impacts karma and the karmic cycle, and how some people do not want to change even if they are given an opportunity, just like Duryodhana. So if anyone else, this is my little, I guess, review. If anyone else has anything to add, this would be a great time. All right. We have we'll be moving on to chapter 22, I believe, and we'll listen to the chapter and discuss the chapter today. And then if there is time, we will also listen to chapter 23 and continue the discussion next week. Saira.
Bhagavatha Vahini, Chapter 22, Arjuna's Fight with Gods. Sage Vyasa continued, O King Parikshit, your grandfathers were ready to renounce everything to God if the need arose. They were prepared to fight with God if the need arose, for they were only observing Kshatriya Dharma when they fought so. You must have heard the story of your grandfather fighting against Lord Shiva and winning from him the divine weapon Pashupatastra. At this, the king suddenly raised his head and asked, Master, what did you say? Did my grandfather wage battle against Lord Shiva? I have not heard about it so far. Tell me about it. Please satisfy my thirst to know about it. Parikshit fell at sage Vyasa's feet, importuning him to narrate the story. Vyasa cleared his throat. Son, how many stories have I to narrate to you? The relationship between the Pandavas and the gods need for its full elaboration not hours, not even months, but years. Still, since you implore, I shall tell you as many as possible within the time available. Listen, O king. The Pandavas were living in the forest. One day, Dharmaraja was overcome with anxiety. He felt the wicked cousins, the Kauravas, may not allow him to rest in peace even after the period of exile is over. It was very doubtful if they will give them their share of the empire. Dharmaraja was afraid that war was inevitable and that the great bowmen of the age, Bhishma, Drona, Karna and Ashwathama, will then raise themselves on the side of the Kaurava hordes. He apprehended that the Pandavas may not be able to overcome such a galaxy of strength. He feared that the war might end in defeat and that the Pandavas might have to spend their years in the jungle itself. Seeing him in the depth of woe, Arjuna approached him and craved for his blessings and permission to go forth and win, by asceticism, weapons from the gods to defeat the foe. Dharmaraja directed him to proceed and please the gods and win through their grace weapons to win the war. So, Arjuna went into the Gandhamadana area, which was inaccessible even to the most enterprising ascetic, and did tapas to propitiate Indra, the sovereign of the gods. Heaven was amazed at the rigors of that tapas and his steady persistence. So, Indra appeared before him, saying, "Son Arjuna, I am pleased by your tapas. But if your desire is to be fulfilled, first win the grace of Lord Shiva. Thereafter, I shall take you to heaven and arm you with all weapons heaven can confer." In accordance with Indra's advice, Arjuna sat meditating on Lord Shiva in order to win his grace. Meanwhile, Shiva resolved upon a drama of his own. I shall tell you what it was, son Parikshit. A huge wild boar, ferociously enraged, ran across the place where Arjuna was observing penance. He saw it, and though during the penance one had to desist from injuring any living being, he hastily took up his bow and arrows when the boar was about to fall upon him. Just at this moment, a bill of the forest, also armed with bow and arrows, appeared before Arjuna with his wife. Arjuna was amazed that a woman was accompanying the bill in that thick forest where no person could safely move about. But when he observed more closely, he found a huge retinue behind the bill, consisting of men and women of fierce appearance, yelling and shouting in strange ways. Arjuna was perplexed and astonished. The person who first appeared, the huntsman with the fierce face and the red glowing eyes, spoke to Arjuna. "You there, who are you? Why have you come to this place? You shall not live if you shoot an arrow against that boar, even by mistake. Be warned. I have pursued it and made it run. What right have you to take up your bow and arrow against it?" These words that he spoke entered Arjuna's heart like a shaft of arrows. He felt terribly hurt, for a common huntsman had insulted him. "The fellow does not know my name or fame, or else he would have not challenged me," he said to himself. He raised his bow and shot an arrow at the boar. And that very moment, the bill too shot an arrow at it. The boar rolled on the ground, dead. The huntsman was in the throes of anger. He showered abuses on Arjuna. "You there, you do not know the rules of hunting. When I have set my eyes on it and selected it as the prey for my arrows, how dare you aim your arrow at it? You are a greedy barbarian." His eyes were casting sparks, so uncontrollable was his rage. Arjuna too was enraged. He shouted back, "Shut up, you scoundrel, or else I shall dispatch you to the domain of death. Save yourself by stopping your wagging tongue. Get back the way you came." The bill stood up to that threat. He did not quail. "Whoever you are, I am not afraid. You may have 330 crores of gods on your side, but I shall not yield. Who gave you permission to enter here? Who are you to order me out? This forest is ours. You are a thief who has sneaked in, and you have the audacity to ask us to get away? He replied. At this, Arjuna guessed that he was no ordinary huntsman. He spoke in a calmer tone. The forest is the property of all. You have come to hunt. I have come to do penance, to please Lord Shiva. I shot that boar only to save myself from its rage. The huntsman, however, was not softened. I don't care whom you adore and whom you desire to please. Accept the wrong that you have done. Why did you shoot the animal I was hunting? Accept and apologize. Make amends, the huntsman insisted. Arjuna lost all patience. This fellow's life too is to end like that of the boar, he told to himself. He is not to be cured by soft words, he felt. So, he selected a sharp arrow and placing it on the bow, shot it at him. It hit him, but like a thorn on rock, it fell on the ground, bent by the impact. So, the astonished Arjuna had to shoot a crescent-headed arrow, which will sever his head. But this arrow was brushed aside by the huntsman with his left hand like a blade of grass. At last, Arjuna let go the unending shower of arrows from his ever-full shoulder back. This too had no effect. Arjuna became desperate, like a man robbed of all his possessions and deprived of all means of resistance. He stood helpless and filled with rage. He was like a bird with clipped wings, a tiger whose teeth have been pulled out and claws cut, a ship without sails. He made an effort to beat the huntsman with the bow itself. It broke into fragments at the impact. Startled at this, Arjuna decided to use his fists, for they were the only weapons left. Girding up his loins, he fell upon the bill and wrestled furiously for sheer victory. The huntsman welcomed this new move with a hearty laugh. They struggled to overpower each other with such terrific holds and blows that it appeared as if two mountains were in mortal conflict. The birds of the forest were so frightened at the unusual din that they flew in terror far up into the sky. The animals of the jungle stood and started sensing some great calamity that hovered over them. The earth shook, unable to bear the burden of the encounter. Despite everything, the bill was evincing no trace of exhaustion. He was laughing in absolute unconcern. He was as active as when the fight first began. Arjuna, however, was bathed in perspiration. He was gasping for breath. His fist was jammed and bleeding. The bill was unhurt and not in the least affected. Besides, when the bill once caught Arjuna in a tight hold, Arjuna vomited blood. At this, the bill burst into a cruel laugh and exulted before his consort with a meaning look. Did you notice that? Arjuna reeled and was in great confusion. He lost his moorings. He whispered to himself, Krishna, why have you humiliated me? Ah, is this too a scene in your drama? Truly, this bill is no ordinary mortal. Perhaps you yourself have come in this form to trample on my pride. Alas, to be overwhelmed by a forest-dwelling huntsman? No, this is your stratagem, your play. This bill is no ordinary fellow. Save me, for I believe this is you yourself. When he said this and turned to the couple in front of him, he saw there not the bill and his wife, but Lord Shiva and his consort, Gauri. They were blessing him with a captivating smile. Their hand was raised with the palm towards him in the Abhaya pose, assuring him that he had no reason to fear. Arjuna was overcome with delight. He ran towards them exclaiming, O Shankara, Mother Gauri, and fell at their feet. He prayed that they should pardon him for his rashness and ignorance. Gauri and Shankara, who are the embodiments of grace, lifted him by the shoulders lovingly and stroked his head affectionately. Son, you have attained the fruition of your life. You did your duty as you were bound to do. That is not wrong at all. Now, take this. Here is a sign of our grace. And he got from the hand of Lord Shiva himself the divine Pashupatastra. O Maharaj Parikshit, how can I extol the prowess of your grandfather who combated with Lord Shiva, armed with the invincible trident? The source of that courage and daring lay in the grace that Lord Krishna showered on him. Your grandfathers never thought of even the slightest activity without his specific order. Indeed, in the Mahabharata battle, his grace was bestowed unasked every moment in ample measure. The depth of love that prompted that grace was known only to them, and others cannot gauge it. When sage Vyasa was remembering this, he shed tears of joy at the good fortune of the Pandava brothers. The person who was listening, namely, Parikshit, was even more overcome with admiration and thankfulness. He was shedding tears of joy. His lips quivered with emotion. His voice was broken by excitement. He could not contain himself. He exclaimed, "Ah, how fortunate I am that I am born in this lineage! How brave, how devoted, how redoubtable were my grandfathers! And imagine my luck, that I am able to hear these glories from the lips of the divine sages like you. Oh, I am indeed thrice blessed. When I listen to the exploits of my grandfathers and the glories of Lord Krishna, I can never say I have heard enough. I long to hear more. Tell me how the Lord saved and guarded my grandfathers in battle. It will be some source of contentment for my hunger and some quench for my thirst."
Sairam. So this is chapter 22, and chapter 23 is a continuation of what he's asking. So we can hear that chapter as well and continue the discussion if that's okay with everyone, because that makes complete sense of an entire portion that is done, and we can move along. So just bear with me.
Bhagavata Vahini, Chapter 23, Guardian on the Battlefield. When the king prayed like this, sage Vyasa said, "O king, the Pandavas, as agreed upon, lived through the 12 years of exile in the forest, and also completed 1 full year of life in incognito. When at last they revealed themselves, Duryodhana, the eldest of the cruel clan, that monster of guile, saw that the full year had not elapsed, and that the Pandavas had broken their contract. So he said that they were bound by the penal clause, a further 12-year exile, and a further 1 year of incognito life. He was adamant in that conclusion. The elders, Bhishma and others, asserted that the Pandavas had scrupulously fulfilled the terms of the contract. The Pandavas had not disclosed their place of stay during the entire year. They had stayed in exile for the full 12 years. But the Kauravas did not accept the patent truth. They prepared the path for their own downfall and destruction. They listened to none. They gave ear to no counsel. They swore that the battlefield alone can settle the issue. What can anyone do in the face of that royal decree? So, both parties engaged themselves in preparing for war. The king endowed with sovereign sway Duryodhana, and the claimants in exile the Pandavas. But truth and justice allied themselves with the exiles, and so a few kings who were motivated by moral principles joined them. The others, in very large numbers, sided with the ruling monarch, and so the Kauravas were able to command 11 Akshaunis, while the Pandavas could collect just 7 only. An Akshauni consists of 1,09,350 foot soldiers, 65,610 horses and horsemen, 21,870 elephants and elephant warriors, and 21,870 chariots and their human equipment. Listen, the chariot of Arjuna had the Lord Krishna, the Gopi Vallabha, as its charioteer. Not only that, he became the charioteer of the destiny of the Pandavas. The Pandavas had, therefore, no weak spot in their armor. He was all the strength they needed, but yet, in the grand drama of the Lord, the role of Arjuna took a sudden unexpected turn which astounded all. When the Lord commanded Arjuna to examine from the chariot, which he kept stationary between the two armies raged for battle, the enemy leaders whom he had to encounter, Arjuna allowed his eyes to spot out in a flash the heroes eager to meet him in contest. Tears flowed immediately from his eyes. He crumbled with despondency and disinclination. It was a scene that filled spectators with shame. But your grandfather was not afflicted or affected with fear or cowardice. He saw before him Bhishma, the revered grandparent who had loved to keep him on his lap and who caressed him as his own child. He saw his respected teacher, Drona, from whom he had learned archery from A to Z. So his heart lamented. Alas! Has this too to be endured by me, this bloody warfare with these great leaders? Persons whom I ought really to worship with tender lovely flowers. How can I shoot arrows at them? Have I to wound the very feet which I must really place reverentially on my head when I dutifully prostrate before them? The sentiment that overpowered him was really this emotion of adoration. It was this that rendered him despondent and not any other weakening emotion. The feelings of I and mine grew so intense in him that he turned to Krishna and said, O Krishna, set the chariot back towards Hastinapura. I wish to go away from all this. Krishna laughed in derision and commented with scarcely concealed scorn. My dear brother-in-law, evidently you seem to be scared of fighting. Well, I shall take you back to Hastinapura and bring instead your consort Draupadi. She has no fear. Come, we shall return. I did not realize you are such a coward, or else I would not have accepted this position as charioteer for you. It is a gross error of judgment on my part. While Krishna was saying thus, and many other harsh statements beside, Arjuna retorted, Do you think that I, who fought with Lord Shiva and won the Pashupata weapon from him, will quail before these common mortals? It is a sense of reverence and mercy that makes me desist from killing these kinsmen, and it is not fear that holds me back. Arjuna spoke for long, arguing on the lines of I and mine, but Krishna did not appreciate his arguments. He explained to him the basic principles of all activity and morality and made him take up the arms he had laid down. He induced him to follow the dictates of moral and social obligations of the Kshatriya caste to which he belonged. When in the midst of battle, the Kaurava warriors all in one gang shot arrows simultaneously on Arjuna, Krishna saved him from the shower, as he had done earlier when he lifted the Govardhana hill to save the villagers of Gokula and the cattle from the floods of hail rained on them by the angry god Indra. He drew all weapons on himself and rescued Arjuna seated behind him in the chariot from the deadly onslaught. Blood flowed from the wounds on his body, but nevertheless he held it against the shower of fiery arrows let loose by the enemy. His aim was that Arjuna must be preserved from harm. He intended also to reduce the might and pride of the wicked opponent and heighten the glory and reputation of Arjuna. He held no weapon himself, but he brought about the annihilation of the enemies and proclaimed before the world the magnificence of the path of Dharma, which the Pandava brothers adhered to. Often during the battle, your grandfather was pained at the role that Krishna had taken on himself. Alas, that we are using you for this insignificant purpose. You, whom we ought to install in the lotus of the heart, have made you sit on the charioteer's plank. We have reduced you to the status of a servant. We have devalued the Lord so meanly. Alas, that we are reduced to such straits. He used to lament within himself. More distressing than all was another painful act that Arjuna was forced to do on and off. Whenever he had to do that act, poor Arjuna was overcome with unbearable remorse. Saying this, Vyasa held his head down as if he wished to desist from mentioning it. This aroused the curiosity of Parikshit even more, and he appealed. Master, what exactly was this inevitable harm he had to do, in spite of its sacrilege? At this he said, O king, in the thick of battle, when the master has to give an indication to the man who acts as the charioteer which way to turn, he cannot hope to be heard if he calls out right or left. The din will be too loud and confusing. So while totally immersed in the wild excitement of coming to grips with the enemy, he has to prod the charioteer's brow with the right or left toe of his feet. He keeps the toes always in touch with the sides of the brow for this purpose. His plank is on a deeper level. If the charioteer is to be driven straight, both toes have to be pressed with equal force. That was the convention. Since such pressure had to be applied with heavily shod feet, both sides of the brow of the Lord daily showed marks of scrape. Arjuna cursed himself for sheer shame. He hated the very idea of war and prayed that the wicked game ceased that very moment. He used to be terribly upset with agony that he had to touch with his feet the head that sages and saints adored. The palms of Krishna, soft and tender like lotus petals, developed boils all over, since they had to hold the reins tight and since the steeds strained their hardest when they were restrained or controlled. The Lord forsook food and sleep, performed services both high and low, and kept ready both horses and chariot in perfect trim. He also went on various other sundry errands, which were fundamental to victory. He bathed the horses in the river, attended to their wounds, and applied balm to cure them. Why go on with the entire list, O king? He acted as a menial in the household of your grandfathers. He never assumed the role of the universal sovereign. That is his real nature and status. That was the measure of his affection for those devoted to him. Said Vyasa the sage to the king.
Okay, Sairam, that is chapter 23. So we have listened to chapter 22 and 23. And I do have discussion points, but I always, obviously, in the whole story, this chapter has so many things to discuss, I feel, especially Krishna's role. And of course, beginning with Arjuna's inner conflict, which we had discussed in the past when we did our Gita Vahini study circle, but we can go back to that in, and Krishna's role as a charioteer was truly something that I think we can learn from, because he did not act as who he truly was. He played his role with such perfection, and again, the narrative goes on about preparation of war and what. So again, the guiding principles of dharma and how can they help us with ethical dilemmas that we always have in our daily lives. We have addressed all of these in different aspects, but those are pointers that I have from this chapter. So we can either take whatever I have put in out here, or we can talk about Krishna's role. Whatever anyone wants to add would be fine. Meanwhile, I'll just put the other chapter discussion points out here. So Does anyone have anything to add here?
Sairam, just start. The role of Krishna, or for that matter, any divinity, is that of a catalyst. That's how I see. They enable, they don't change, they don't interfere. So even Swami has said that many times, that he's a witness, and it's for you to change. Because if they are going to change everything, then there is no need for us to change at all. So we can just continue with it, and with the belief that he's going to change everything. We don't have to do anything. That's not what God is meant to. He is meant to show you the path and make you do it. So it is for us to do it. So I can see Krishna's role in this war, as well as in any divinity. The role is just to point, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and then keep pointing until we change. So it is not for their role to change us. It is for us to change.
Yeah. So yes, we do know Sakshi, eternal witness. That is who he truly is. But so when we face our moral and emotional challenges, who is the witness to that from your end? Like what should we be doing? Where should we be going? Right? He had Krishna who was speaking and who was talking and guiding, and but we also should be looking towards something that will help us connect.
Yeah, that is always within us. So it is not external. We shouldn't be looking for external guidance. It could be coming through external sources, but that guide is right there residing within us, which will point us in the right direction. Only we have to listen to it, and we have to hear it or lend our ear to it. Normally we just ignore it, brush it aside, and then go with what our mind dictates or what the convention is, even if we know if that divinity points that it is wrong.
Yeah, in fact, that exactly what Krishna did for Arjuna. He, throughout the chapters, he did not finally say that you do this. In the 18th chapter, what I remember, he said, I have given you all the facts. Now you decide what is good to be done or not to be done. So even in the end, he said that, and I can quote the verse also. So that is what the kripa is. That's what kripa is. Kripa is not that he will do it for us. That is a kripa. He has given us enough knowledge and resources to understand what's right and what's wrong. As I think we have mentioned in the previous sessions also, there are various kinds of kripa: Ishwar kripa, Guru kripa, Granth kripa, and Swayam ki kripa, apni kripa. We are lucky to have God's kripa and Guru's kripa. We have got a Guru and the scriptures. The only thing left is Swayam ki kripa. That is what is left. Everything else is there. So the effort has to come from us only. Everything else is available. Everything else has shown us the path. We just have to do the effort to learn it and immerse into it, and then start acting on it. That's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even with some of the things from this chapter, Krishna was not just staying as a passive observer. He performed his role. So he was actually, doing as a charioteer, it describes, you're taking care of the horses. He was being, pressed with his, leg by Arjuna to guide him on where to turn. And so he was following all the rules, for the role that, God has taken. And so even our Swami, we have talked about this particular incident where Swami just read a newspaper article that, somebody died, out of hunger. And then he called his students, and we are going to now start this Gram Seva. That's how the project started. So again, he assembled and directed the students to do the job, but he also acted in what exactly needs to be done, and this is how you do it. And he made sure that every house they go and count the number of people and give only that much of amount of food, so that people don't waste it. And so I think it was not just advice, but I think he was also doing work.
Absolutely. That was Swami's doing.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, the Gram Seva. See, I think it is the catalyst. See, the catalyst's purpose is to enable the good things to happen. So they help. It's not like they don't participate completely. It's not like Swami was not caring for Gram Seva. He wanted to do that, meaning Gram Seva is but he wanted to show how it is to be done. So, but he didn't do it personally. In other words, he wanted all the people to do it. So I think pointing to what is right is the role of that divinity. So that is there. But then how you go about it, they can guide you in that. If you have that faith, they can guide you onto how to go about doing it. But the doing part of it, as Swami says, you take one step, he will take 100 steps. But that 100 steps is only to help you move in that right direction. But it doesn't mean that you take one step, 100 steps, and then done. So you have to keep going. You have to keep doing it.
Yeah. So same, so many stories now, and I am blanking out on all the stories today, but with the Ati Maharudram that happened in Parthi now, they have been talking about when Swami did it the first time and how he selected his priests and what was his role. He sat through the entire, what was it, 58 days or that something like that. I forgot but yeah. So basically he was there, but though he did not chant anything, he actually assigned, and he was so particular on who should be called to participate and chant the in the Ati Maharudram. So yes, there are such things, but when it comes to us, how do you, or what is your go-to? I would say, when you are in a dilemma, what is your go-to to say, hey, okay, I mean, this is a tough situation, and this is how I'm going to leave this result to someone, or this is what I'm going to do. How do you, put that into practice today in your lives? I think that is the most important part of all of this, because that is where we will have takeaways. That is where we will learn. And that is what should come to our mind when we are faced with challenges also. And I think that yes, please go ahead.
Yesterday I was watching interview of Swami. Exactly, he mentioned the same points we spoke now. The two of the main points he mentioned that every man or a woman, every human being should have 4 qualities. That is knowledge, balance, the other 2 are integrity and service. I think. So to add upon what Venkat sir and Shankaran sir said, yes, God is a catalyst and he makes good things to happen. But for us as a human beings to, waver between this emotional toughness or physical toughness or whatever it is, we need to have 2 things on prayer. One is balance. So Swami clearly mentioned out of 4 points that for the students sitting there, 3 points are like top floor. You can build them, but balance is like the basement. Without balance, you cannot listen to God. You cannot inherit even if you have to decide between what to inherit from the catalyst that is speaking to you. If he says that to go in the right direction, you should be in a emotional balance situation to take that point that you have to go in right direction. So that's why Swami always mentions about balance. And second thing is knowledge. to know that you have to be balanced, you have to have knowledge. So what is knowledge? Again, in Swami's way, knowledge is something which you should know what is right and what is wrong, what is dharma and what is adharma, and the results of dharma and adharma. And yes, so to add upon these things, balance is the, so we are talking about self, right? It comes self. So balance should be within us. So it should be developed. That's it.
Saira, just to explain that in the form of example so you can understand what Swami is, I think, saying is that steadiness of mind has to be there. So if you're watching a mirror and you're shaking all the time, you can't see the image clearly, right? You have to be sitting still and then you can see the image clearly. So in that balance, it means a steadiness of mind. And how will you get the steadiness of mind? Is through sadhana and complete faith. That's when your mind will be steady. Then you can see clearly and build on all those things.
I also feel balance can also be related to keep the emotion off. When you have to take a decision on a problem that you're facing, if you are emotionally charged, that can actually misdirect you from taking the right decision. So balance could also mean, keep your, sort of calm and think about, that's when the knowledge also comes into the picture. But one of the things I do want to say from which you can take away from here is these are all, examples. So a problem is posed and immediately how they come up with a solution to that problem, that, it can be done. What seemed like a very humongous problem can be solved. So that is all the message. Not that Swami didn't know there were, these things are happening, but he's just giving a lesson. Hey, you can actually do it. Just take that step. And so I think from that perspective, we have to take all these and then use our think, is there something I can do? If so, do it. And, and it could just mean, for example, sometimes beyond you, just pray. That's something which we can certainly do.
Yeah. Saira.
Zaira.
Yes. From the examples like Krishna or Swamis, Swami has done so much, so many service projects. And he himself has served the people who come to Puttaparthi with the, food. He doesn't have to go from each person, but he did it. He didn't say, hey, you go and serve. He himself did. And Krishna's being a charioteer, it is so touching that he knows he is God. Maybe Arjuna forget or other people, but once he took up the job of being a charioteer, there is no job which is too big or too small for him. He completely got immersed in the job, from washing the horses, or he doesn't mind with Arjuna touching his face with his feet. He was thoroughly into it. So we can learn, if we take up something, we put our pride and ego aside and dedicate 100% of ourselves into it and do a good job, sincere, it doesn't matter. I have seen a lot of things when I went to India. People have this attitude of, why should I do this? Why should I? Even here also. But we think we are better than this. Main thing, that is what I'm taking from this, is to get our ego, put it aside and totally, dedicate ourselves to what we have taken. Be an example. Like an actor, he acts as a billionaire on the stage. He knows he is not a billionaire or millionaire. And next day he is a beggar. Is he a beggar in real life? No. He, as an actor, he knows he is playing a role. So we can also take that attitude and say, I'm playing this role in this life, doing this. That might help.
But yes, please go ahead.
To add on, that's what Swami did. That's what Swami did for 84 years. He played his duty very perfectly and beautifully, coming to darshan and, walking all over the, Prashanti or Vrindavan. Or he doesn't have to, he know that he's God, but he doesn't have to do that. But every time he promised the darshan, he's coming to the, until the last minute, he played his duty, very perfectly. That's what I want to mention.
See, Sairam, even in this story, when Arjuna goes and he doesn't know that it's Lord Shiva. When he has so much of ego, it's right there. He cannot do anything. So the ego is one thing we have to be extremely conscious about, and to kill that ego, because the moment we have the ego that it is me, then the body or the mind, that complex, if we are just giving importance to it, then it's not going to win. So we are not going to progress in that complex. So we got to realize that it is the divinity that is the direction that we need to go. We have to do that. So anything that is materialistic, anything, I mean, in the practical situation, when we are faced with an issue or when we are faced with a choice between this and this, the only evaluation we need to do is which is leading us more into this materialistic direction and which is taking us outside of this. And taking it outside of this, even though that may lead to financial or in the commercial, in the world sense, it may lead to a lot of infamy, or people will ridicule, or you will face problems, all health issues, whatever it may be. But that is the direction we need to take. And that requires a lot of courage in many situations. It depends on the situation.
Yeah. So my first off, from chapter 22, my biggest takeaway is it's very easy to do tapas during that time. Somehow their years are really different. In 12 years, they seem to have done so much. For us, 12 years have gone by, and we don't. And he went in to do tapas, and Shiva appeared also right away. So I guess that is kind of, I think they had an easier way or easier access. But then again, that's a different conversation. But yes, I agree with the ego. But the thing with ego is, it is so subtle, it doesn't go. Even after death, I believe it doesn't. I mean, I think we had one of those discussions here in our satsang where we talked about ego to that extent. Now, even if there is an awareness that we don't know if you're being egoistic or not, we don't know where that ego is playing a role. Every time there is an emotion, there is an attachment, there is so many things that come into, and that's why it's called a body mind complex. That ego is very hard to identify. So I think coming down to making it simpler would be easier than having a conversation about how to stop my ego. I don't think even Arjuna was able to do that. What? Okay. Sorry, I'll just fix my battery ready.
I think, see, the ego, often we don't realize that ego showing up when we do or say or talk or at that moment. After that, we realize, oh my God, that's my ego talking. So at that time, when we are saying something, for example, we say something very, very casually, we may say something, and then we may realize, oh my God, why did I use that word? Okay, that word could have meant like that. So after the thought, we may be able to analyze and say, oh my God, that could be interpreted. So sometimes it's not even, you may not be egoistic, but the way you say, others may interpret that you are egoistic. So that is also, I mean, that's also a sign of ego. So because we cannot afford to do that. So that's why best is to keep silence. But then when we say, just Swami is the best example. He will say one word and that will be the most appropriate. And often that requires a lot of, evolution, I think. We have to evolve to that level so that the right words come straight out of our.
Yeah, Saira.
Well, one thing you brought up, that thing, when he's fighting with Shiva, of course, he does not know it is Shiva. But, he is in this chapter, he is actually displaying a lot of ego.
Yeah.
Most of the chapter, that's what we see.
Yes.
And in spite of all that,
Shiva still appeared.
Shiva and gave him the dates.
Yeah.
So the lesson I'm learning from here is, we come across some situation where we approach it with absolute ego, and then we still find success in it. And so the lesson I think we need to be learning here is,
completely different from what, okay, yes.
Yeah, because the thing is, any success that you get, it's not yours. It is because of the
Saira,
grace.
yes.
And so, you may approach it in any way. Because the success is more likely if you go approach it with the four things that he talked about. But if you go with so much of emotion and still you succeed, at least at that point, like he did, that point, you have to say, thank you, you did it, not me. I think that is one lesson.
Yeah.
I think Shiva and Parvati appeared only when he surrendered, when he felt that it is not me, or must be Krishna, or it must be a divinity. So only when he realized that, they showed up. So I think that's
Is the moral of the story. The moment we surrender, he will appear. The moment Draupadi kept doing all those things, but the moment he surrendered, leaving the sari from her teeth, God appeared. So it's the moment when you leave yourself, God is there. It just needs to appear right then and there. So, and in fact, that was the question, the original question of Bhavani ji, that he had God with him, and he had better access to. That's what you said?
Yeah.
We all have access. We all have access to him. It's a matter of rising to that level.
Yeah.
One. And that's what is satsang, the guru, the scriptures. That's what they are offering to us. And all this is collecting up here, and that will appear at that moment. That will give us the path. That will guide us. That will guide us. In Sikhism, they have 10 gurus.
Correct.
After 10 gurus, they left that book as the guru.
Granth.
Guru Granth Sahib is the guru. So at the end, that is the teaching. So there is no scarcity of the teachings, the scarcity of the absorption, person to absorb and absorb. And once all this is absorbed, that itself will appear as God, that itself will appear as Guru for us to show us the path.
Yeah, Sairam. Yeah.
Sairam, a simple mathematical way of thinking of this is man plus ego is God. Man minus ego is God. Man minus ego is
Man
God.
minus ego is God. Yes.
So,
But so I agree with all the points that have been mentioned. But when there is an action, our first step to go to is what Arjuna did. It's always egoistic. Either you will have anger, any emotion is a reflection of ego. Any emotion is supposed to be, yes.
you cannot perform an action without ego as long as you're alive. It's not possible. So you cannot completely let go of it, because as long we are living this life, right? Everywhere it is I, the consciousness of I is there. But that's why Bhagavad Gita says at the same point, right? Do everything without expectation. That's the best you can do. The sense of ego will never completely disappear. I mean, when it disappears, you're no longer there. You're one, you're just gone.
So one more thing I wanted to add there was, in that particular one, Arjuna did his effort completely, even though the ego was playing a role. But as a fighter, he was, getting all the arrows. He was exhausted with the arrows, and then he's bleeding and he's still fighting. So that is again saying that you have to put your effort, 100% of your effort. I think that's other lesson.
And that rage is required for fighting. That rage is required. You cannot, be calm and, doing all those things, with that. That is the Kshatriya dharma. That's why Kshatriyas are more egoistic. They are trained in that way also, genetically also and phenotypically also. They are trained in that way also. So that's why if you don't get into that mode of fighting, you will not fight. The other big point which I wanted to mention was that Krishna took that role of a driver, and he was sitting in the feet of Arjuna, and Arjuna was supposed to touch him with his right thumb and left thumb, those. So I remembered that bhajan. It was in Hindi. We remembered it last week also. I just want to mention it at this moment. प्रबल प्रेम के पाले पड़कर प्रभु को नियम बदलते देखा, अपना मान टले टल जाए, भक्त का मान ना टलते देखा. For the sake of bhakta, he will do anything. Strictest rules he will change. He will change. He showed the sun to hide and he showed the sun to come up. So that is the Prabha Prem. If the Bhakt and Bhagwan, that kind of affection we have with him, he will come for you. He will be there for you.
Yeah, like you said, we have to recognize it though. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll add one practical way of thinking, because
Please.
a lot of times we are all same thing, right?
Yeah.
Daily life, you think me, my greatness, I did this, I did that,
Yeah.
I treated that and I conquered that, whatever. So one story kind of stuck in my mind, and I try to remember that sometimes too when I realize that moment when I'm like thinking very egoistically, it just brings me down quite nicely because the story where, I think everyone heard, where one of the Devtas is cursed and he is born as a pig and he has his own family, with his wife and kids, and he's just living very, very happily there. And then one other Devtas who's traveling, he sees and he realizes that person is a Yaksha and he's got cursed as that life, right? So he takes pity on him and he goes to save him. He says, hey, I can bring you back, I will give my, whatever powers I have and bring you back to the Yakshalok. You don't deserve to be here. He looks at him and he says, who asked you to help? I'm very happy here. Don't you see how beautiful my wife is, how beautiful my kids are? I am in the best of the best worlds. And where are you going to take? I don't want to come. You can go. So I remember that. I'm like, yeah, we're all like that. We're all these little, who are we? Like, and we take pride in everything, this little beauty or that little wealth.
Absolutely.
So it just tries to bring me down. I try to remember that sometimes.
Yeah, very nice bit. Thank you.
I'm looking at and I'm seeing and watching what happened after the Sambur Ramayana was completed. And I never knew that these things happened because I never saw, I never read. See, when it was the time to change the yuga from, I think it was Treta Yuga to the next yuga, then every devas were very destined that we have to change. Niyati cannot be changed at all. But in that respects, so many things happened, like Rama wanted to die. Die means, change his form to God of Vasudeva. But Love and Kush was not agreeing to that because Rama was there to bring the righteousness in Ayodhya. And the public and the Praja were not happy why he's leaving it. He's not supposed to. So they were having their own questions. Lava and Kusha was having their own questions. And in fact, Bharata tried to stop Lava Kusha. Then Rama said, don't stop them, because they are doing their duty. They have the dharma to do it. Even Hanumanji was sent away for some reason, because Hanumanji was a Priya Bhakt of Rama. And Rama never wanted to, disappoint him as a god. So everybody is doing the whole point to discuss here is, even Shankaranji talked about Arjuna, his rage and all those kind of things, but he was doing his duty. So dharma is going to be the key role to be played in every human being. Righteousness should prevail. So that is what my input here.
Yeah, Saira.
Sairam, yeah, that is true. But with what mindset we do is
Correct.
what
Intent.
matters. So if we are going to completely surrender and then do the same action with the total surrender, that it is not me who is doing, it is, I am playing this role and I have to play the role to the best of my ability and with the awareness that it's just a role that I am playing.
Right.
And as long as we do that way, I think that is what is going to take us out of that ego.
Yeah.
Or at least reduce our ego.
So I have a question. We say that for us to live here, every action, emotion that we have is ego based, and the action is out of that emotion, right? Did I understand that right? Now, if that is the case, then how do we understand that this action is something that is needed for the betterment of is that what it is? That it's the betterment of the humanity. And so this emotion is okay, and this ego is okay, and that ego is wrong? One question. And second question is, we see Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi, right? We say they didn't have ego at all, but they existed. So how was their ego? What was that in them, that ego, very different from ours?
Yeah.
So two questions.
Really good questions, but we are at time. 6 o'clock right now. So I've got to end with Om and Three Shantis, and we'll continue that discussion. I will bring that up next week when we'll start with that discussion next week. So with that, let's end with Om and Three Shantis, please. Om Shanta Shanta Shanti. Sai Ram, thank you all for participating today.